Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to a brand new episode of the You Got the Ron Dude podcast. I'm your host, Ron Jammin. This podcast is available full audio episodes on Anchor.fm, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Video clips are available on YouTube and Spotify, so be sure to check those out. And I'll have links to all my social media in the description. Well, this episode is going to be all about the long-awaited, highly anticipated Avatar: The Way of Water, the second installment in the Avatar movie series. And apparently we're getting 3 sequels after this one, but we'll see how The Way of Water does. I think there's a lot of interest in it. A lot of people getting excited about the second installment again. I say again because the first movie came out in 2009. I saw it with my sister at the beginning of 2010. And I think at that time they announced a sequel would come out 2012 maybe, then 2014. And it kept getting pushed back. And here we are 12 years later. Almost 13 since the first one came out. But recently, I started writing down a lot of theories, ideas that I have, kind of speculation. So I'm going to dive deep into those about the gap in between the films, in the actual movies, because this one takes place over a decade after the first one. Why I think Grace had a secret family. I'll explain that. And of course, what I think most people are talking about is the return of the Colonel, Miles Quaritch. I have some theories on that as well. But I'd love to hear from you, so if you're listening on Anchor.fm, you can actually leave a voice message. But otherwise, leave some comments, hit me up on social media. But let's dive right into Avatar: The Way of Water, which is going to come out in December, hopefully. Please don't make us wait till next year. If so, well, we don't really have a choice. Okay, so let's start with the timeline. Because I couldn't figure out at first. I was like, why the gap between the end of the first movie and this one? Because it said it takes place a little over 10 years after the first Avatar. But as you remember, the trip from Earth to Pandora took 6 years. That's why they were in the cryo sleep. So at the end of the first movie, the humans they're instructed to go home, but we don't actually know that. I'll get into that in just a little bit. But let's say they do. They return to Earth, so that's 6 years. They regroup. There's probably some new tech since they left. They come back. So that's 12 years, if that makes sense. 6 years back to Earth. They get all their stuff together. They come back. So that's 12 years, which makes sense. But that's if they went to Earth. They went back. Because what if they went and they couldn't find Earth, or everybody had evacuated? Like Jake said at the end of the first one, the humans were sent back to their dying planet. That was 2154. Now that 2154, that's Earth years, I believe. So jumping ahead to 2166. But if Earth's resources have been depleted, or they're on the verge of extinction pretty much, what are the odds that all humans are going to come on the next trip to Pandora? Like, they'll give a speech in that and be like, well, we found this planet, but they'll, accuse the Na'vi and other tribes of, taking over or something. So be like, we got to take this planet for ourselves. And then they mention the Unobtanium. And be like, we can all share in that. That'll be our new source of income. That'll be our money. Or do you think at the end of the first Avatar, the humans, they set up on a nearby planet? Because Pandora is a moon. All right, next let's talk about Grace. Because I believe that in Avatar form, she had a family of her own. And you know that Sigourney Weaver is returning in the sequel, which a lot of people are confused about. But she's connected to this character named Kiri, who's adopted by Jake and Neytiri. So I think she's either voicing her, or you can tell in the first trailer, I think we see her. She's swimming underwater, and she kind of looks up at that plant or whatever in amazement. But obviously Grace kept this a secret. Because you think about the timeline again, because this is, let's say it's 12 years after the first one. So Kiri is 12, was adopted by Jake and Neytiri. And we didn't learn of her in the first movie because there just wasn't any room for that. And I'll talk about the other kid of Jake and Neytiri next, because that has to do with this. Because you think about how much time Grace had on that planet. And, you know, all the training they had to go through, setting everything up. And whether Grace, maybe she actually fell in love with someone. It could have been in the Na'vi or another tribe. Or she was curious about their genetics and just wanted to, create another being with someone. But I could see that as a possibility. That's where Kiri came from, Grace. And then the father was either killed during the last battle of Avatar, or is out there amongst another tribe. And if this is the case, they may not even reveal it in the way of water. It could be later on. But let me know what you think. And the other person that Jake and Neytiri adopt is named in the credits. It's listed as Javier, nicknamed Spider, Socorro. And that's the human we see in the trailer who's living amongst the Na'vi. And if you pay close attention in the beginning, when they're kind of going along that tree, they're kind of like prancing along, you can see him, I believe, in kind of the background. He's there with them. And you also see him, with the bow and arrow, and he has the breathing mask on. Apparently he was rescued and adopted by Jake and Neytiri. He was born on Pandora in one of the human camps. And at the end of Avatar, when they said, a few humans were asked to stay, I don't think they meant him because he was just a baby. But he has an advantage because he's growing up with them. And he'll live just like an Avatar. I wouldn't say just like a Na'vi because there's so many tribes in that. But he'll definitely be on their side. But that could be a twist later on. Maybe he changes sides or is convinced or brainwashed by the RDA. Or even Parker himself. Or lied to, betrayed, whatever the case may be. But it'd be very interesting to see where Spider's story goes. But earlier I talked about Grace's secret family. So Jake and Neytiri have Kiri and Javier to look after, which I think is sweet. But I also hope that they have a family, they have kids of their own, but maybe they can't for some reason. Who knows? But let me know what you think. Because I think both kids, they could be kidnapped, both of them, or one of them. And maybe even taken to Earth, held hostage for whatever reason. Because again, you think of that 6-year journey to Earth. But I'm very curious because you see that Javier is a warrior. You see him with the bow and arrow. And with Kiri, because I wonder if they're the same age. But yeah, I'm very psyched about this movie and curious to see where all this goes. And I'm curious because again, it's 12 years and the humans are back. Do you think they're still after the rock, the Unobtanium? And I'm also curious, who discovered that? What human did? And what were they doing out there? Because it's a 6-year journey. So I wonder if they'll have maybe a flashback, a montage, or even start The Way of Water with a clip. Like they venture out into the unknown. And because you got to worry, because when you don't know about Pandora, it's like this planet, we're just going to land on it, start researching and digging. Like you'd worry about other life. So I'm hoping we see something like that in any of the sequels, really, or even if it's a separate short film. But do you think the humans are still after that? Or is that more of a side mission? Now it's about revenge. However, considering that the first movie takes place, at least on Earth, in 2154, they'll have advanced drone technologies. So, of course, they could probably just send, different drones, different robots and such to other planets and save them the trip. So they could have sent one out to Pandora, let's say, the moon, and it started digging and discovered this rock. So that's definitely a possibility. Instead of just sending some team out there, because who knows how many other planets have this, really. Or would other planets have some different kind of, valuable rock or something else of worth. Okay, let's get into it. Colonel Miles Quaritch is back. A lot of people are confused. Was that him we saw in the trailer in Avatar form? Didn't he die in the first movie? It was announced a long time ago that he'd be back as the main villain in all 4 movies, all 4 sequels, aside from the first Avatar. But that doesn't make sense to me, just because while it's possible he's the main villain, why would Cameron let that out? That's a big spoiler. And whether it's in human form or Avatar, I don't think that... I'm not even sure if that's really confirmed by Cameron, but that's just a major spoiler out there. So that I'm not sure of. It is possible, though. But it also seems like, wouldn't we get bored with the character? Now, if he doesn't actually, say, fight Jake, which I think he will again, their last duel, maybe until the last Avatar movie, perhaps he's more in the background. He's leading the operation. And another thing is, in the trailer, the first trailer for The Way of Water, we believe that's him we're seeing in Avatar form. And that Avatar looks just as pissed as he would. So he wouldn't want to stay in Avatar form. And if that is the case, it'd be a suicide mission. So I think he'd be like, screw the Unobtanium. Like, I'm going to take down all these people. I can infiltrate them just like Jake did. I think that Colonel Miles, his body, his human body, is healing throughout the events of the second movie. And you may be like, well, he died at the end of the first one. He was shot with 2 arrows. And as he mentioned towards the beginning of the movie, he knows that they dip the arrows in a neurotoxin that stops your heart after a minute. However, think about it. He knew that. What if he was taking or even testing an anti-serum? So when he's shot with the arrows, keep in mind he has his mask on, his breathing mask on. And he does topple over, but we don't see him take his last breath. And Neytiri would assume he's dead because, again, the poison on the arrow. But it seems like Colonel Miles or anyone in that operation would be like, well, we know this is what they do, so let's develop something to fight it or to prevent it. But he was shot with 2 arrows, so he needs time to heal. And that's why he has the avatar. Because I also thought, well, if his human body's dead, how does he connect with the avatar? How does he link to it? Because he wasn't able to do the Tree of Souls ceremony like Jake did at the very end of the first Avatar. And it's also possible that Miles was cloned, had a clone of himself, of his human body. That's definitely a possibility. And if you make one clone, it's like, well, why wouldn't you make more? But right now I'm thinking that his human body is healing and he'll return because he's like, I don't want to stay like this in Avatar. I don't want to be like the Na'vi. No way. But again, it could make for a good suicide mission. But let me know what you think. Because I'm thinking at the end of the first Avatar, after he's shot, he topples over. Neytiri goes in to save human Jake. While she's in there, and it could have been afterwards even, the RDA, they fly in, they retrieve Miles' body, and it's possible he had a homing device that he activated when he landed that we just didn't see. They'll kind of insert that into the scene if they do a flashback. But it's possible that while he's the main villain in all the sequels, he's kind of, like I said, behind the scenes. He's on standby. He's in Avatar form, but his appearance, they might be like, well, they're going to recognize me. So I won't do what Jake did, but we'll just get more of the humans to infiltrate maybe other tribes as well. And he could do that. But it's just if he's the villain in all the sequels, I think he has to play, a lesser role. Maybe. Like he's in the movie throughout, but it's in, limited scenes. So you kind of build up his character arc. Because if they do a slow build, that could be really interesting. Because it's a great character, but right now I'm convinced that, the human body's healing, it's connected to his avatar, it's linked to it. And let me know what you think in the comments. Leave a voice message on anchor.fm. Let me know what you think. And we'll see in the next trailer if they reveal more. Maybe somebody narrates or it's a line from the movie about the Colonel. But I'm really excited about this. They've already got my money for this movie. Definitely. I just want to know. But it's possible they won't reveal what happened to him, until later sequels. Could be. We just see an Avatar and we're like, is that Colonel Miles? Or it has a different name? Could be misleading, maybe a misdirect, but we'll see. I'm very excited, and I'd love to hear from you. Well, now let's talk about Tom Sully. That's Jake's brother, who we saw briefly in the original movie. And he was killed, and that's why Jake replaced him. They're identical twin brothers. But it's funny because I've seen the original movie several times, and I never really paid much attention to that. I was like, oh, that's too bad, and then you move on. But then you're like, wait. So he was stabbed, they took his money and stuff, and it's like, that's definitely possible. But was Tom allowed, outdoors in civilization? Like, let's talk about his training on Earth. Was he allowed to leave? Because if he was on base, it seems like with cameras, they would have easily tracked and found his killer. Now, there are, a few different possibilities. Because let's just say, he went out one night on the town and was stabbed and killed. They took his stuff. Did Tom kill himself? Did Colonel Miles kill him? Because you figure, like Parker, he's all about money. So if Miles says, I want this guy dead because he disagreed with me, because, Tom was training for however long. You learn the language of the Na'vi. You learn about their culture, the atmosphere, how to survive. And you go through all that training, so I'm sure Parker would have been like, we're not going to kill him because you don't like him. Like, he's been training for years. Then Miles brings up, well, he happens to have a brother with a military background. And even if Tom and Miles didn't have a disagreement, or they didn't even interact, it's still possible, the betrayal. And Parker being on board because he sees that Tom has an identical twin brother, Jake. And it's just the cover-up, I think, could work no matter what happened, because I can see Jake learning about this in The Way of Water or another sequel and kind of having a Finn moment, like in The Force Awakens. Like, he just kind of wakes up and it's like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not a Na'vi. I'm not a person of Pandora. This is crazy. And it's nothing against them. He just realizes it's like that betrayal sinks in so deep and affects him. Whether it was Miles, who I think stabbed him to death and then covered it up himself, or with Parker. But that's why Grace wasn't informed of the replacement. Because they had 6 years to communicate that while he was traveling from Earth to Pandora. But they chose not to, which is very suspect. But again, it's even more tragic, or as tragic, we find out that Tom killed himself. Because we saw his head and part of his chest in that. So maybe he took something, like drank something, or he stabbed himself, below. But it seems like there's just more to it. Or not. He was just stabbed and killed. But again, if he was able to go outside, if he's training on Earth, it doesn't seem like he'd be let out of the base, of the camp. They'd be like, no, you eat your meals here. We have entertainment. And kind of like that movie, The Island, from Michael Bay. It's like, yes, you're stuck inside, but you have everything you need there. But let me know what you think. Did Tom commit suicide? Was it a stabbing and they just robbed him for his money? Did Colonel Miles kill him or have him killed and covered up? Did Miles and Parker team up? Because maybe Tom was going to leak some information, which in 2154 would be even easier to do. Was he going to be a whistleblower? Or did he just not agree with the mission? Like, he didn't want to infiltrate the Na'vi, only to ask them to leave. But I can totally see Jake finding out and him just losing it. And that helps build up for more sequels in that, like as we go. Because 4 sequels, that's a lot of story. That's a lot of stuff to go over. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm just saying we got to keep, these storylines and like connecting to the past, using things like this to build up for the next movie, let's say. But let me know what you think. Leave a voice message on anchor.fm or leave some comments. And I wonder, in the Way of Water, the Na'vi and or other tribes, I think they're already infiltrated by avatars, by human-generated avatars. But I don't think we'll be aware of it. It'll be some revelation, something like that, a character we never suspected. And I wonder, like I was talking about Colonel Miles, if he's kind of in the background in this movie. Like he's leading the operation, but he's not in combat necessarily. I wonder if there'll be another villain. Not just the humans, of course, because they're going to return, en masse, I think. And also, I was thinking about the title of the movie because it didn't blow me away, The Way of Water. Because you figure it's like, well, the sequel, the humans, of course, are going to come back. And with more, because they were outnumbered in this one. They're all sent home. They're going to regroup. Probably new technology on Earth since they left. Because they left, that's 6 years. And then however long they were there during the events of the first movie. Because remember, they already had their camps, their bases set up. And then 6 years back to Earth. I'm sure there's some new technology. They may even come back with nuclear weapons. But back to what I was saying, The Way of Water, obviously there's going to be a lot of shots underwater. It's going to look beautiful. Sure did in the trailer. What do you want to bet that they're going to contaminate, or already did, Pandora's water supply? Or do they find out it's special or worthy like the Unobtanium? Because The Way of Water, I like that it doesn't spoil anything, but it's also like, oh, yeah, because in the first movie, we don't really explore the depths of the oceans of Pandora. So, what do you think? Well, that's all I have for this episode, but when the second trailer comes out, if there's anything else I can think of, I'll definitely report back in an episode, or even just a clip. But I do like that the title and the trailer so far hasn't spoiled anything. And because you never know. But not saying we'll be outsmarted necessarily, but I think, with the timeline gap in between the movies, that alone creates room for a lot of stories that have already developed, a lot of new characters who they're familiar with, but we're not. And they just plant a lot of seeds, a lot of opportunity for that. And I also hope that this second movie, The Way of Water, ends with a cliffhanger. And it's interesting because, again, we're going to have like 3 more sequels after this. So it makes you wonder. Because as much as we love the Na'vi, all the tribes in that, and Pandora, you also want that Infinity War type ending, just heartbreaking. But imagine like if that had, not just Endgame, but like another sequel, another one. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with all of this. Because you don't want to do too much in the sequel, or you branch out, you start trying to set up different stories all in one movie, or it's really boring. and doesn't give you much. It kind of sets up the next movie. But I do have faith in James Cameron, not only as a filmmaker, but as a storyteller. And doesn't do a lot of sequels, which isn't a bad thing. Because you look at the success of Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, and very different visually, groundbreaking special effects. I'm actually not even worried if our minds aren't blown by the visuals in this one, just because we've achieved, what is it up to, like 8K video quality? And with CGI, once you can do everything, you can create anything on a computer. It's like, how do you go beyond that? So I'm hoping that in this one, we're blown away by the story, that it's more original than the first movie, because that one, it's like, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just guy falls in love, has a change of heart, changes sides, changes teams. But I think that Cameron, obviously he had the 4 sequels outlined. And whether all the scripts were done, I'm not sure, because I know they just started shooting, I believe, part 4. But I'm very excited because it doesn't seem like he would make 4 sequels unless he was like, oh no, we're going to spread these out, and, The Way of Water, and then that'll connect to the next one, be a direct sequel or another time jump. But I'm really looking forward to all the movies, and they definitely won't disappoint visually, but it's just a matter of the story and the pacing as well, because I'd like to see a lot more action in The Way of Water, and just a cliffhanger ending. And maybe there's something in The Way of Water that sets up all the sequels, which I don't really care, because each could have its own story. Or they just, again, they plant seeds in this one that sets up the rest of the sequels, which could be interesting. But I wonder in the sequels, because there are so many, will Jake and Neytiri even be main characters in all of them? Are we going to lose either of them or both of them? But by the time Avatar 5 comes out, heck, I'll be in my late 40s. Or even 50s or 60s if they're delayed. But it's kind of funny, though, because the first Avatar comes out at the end of 2009. Here we are, almost to the end of 2022. Well, it's mid-September. But the reason I bring that up is because we've had, about 13 years. And that's the distance between the first Avatar and The Way of Water, the timeline jump. But it's funny how that lines up. But I'd love to hear from you. Let me know. Grace's Secret Family, The Return of Colonel Miles, Pandora's water supply. Do you think it's going to be contaminated? Do you think Pandora is dying? Talk more, about the kids, about Kiri and Spider. Do you think Tom Sully was killed? And just a lot to theorize about and speculate about, which is really exciting. But again, if you're listening on anchor.fm, you can leave a voice message. Podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And video clips are available on YouTube and Spotify. And I'll have links to all that and my social media in the description. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoy this episode, and everything will be broken up into video clips. So make sure to check those out, again, on YouTube and Spotify. But I'm curious what you think, and crossing my fingers, December this year, The Way of Water, and I'm even looking forward to the next trailer or two. But that's it for now. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you next time.